Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much. And again, thanks to Ms. Susan and our engineer Dean for helping us. To our listeners for being patient. We apologize. Sometimes when it rains, it gets wet. I remember the quote from Bob Marley earlier when it says, talking about rain. But I think we don't often appreciate how the rain actually can impact and affect us in so many ways. As we invite you to be a part of our monthly Mental Health Matters, we ask you to rejoin us after the break.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. And Royal Fidelity Bank and Trust, money at work.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. As we invite you to be a part of, a day above ground, they say, is a good day. My good friend Mike always tells me, if you think today's a bad day, try missing one. Well, I learned something the other day that even better. I appreciate Carla sharing with us that his mother relayed, if it's a day you wake up, it's a great day. If a day that you see the end of the day is an excellent day. And I'm glad for this day, Dr. Alexandra Borden together with Ms. Shannon Seymour for joining us for a rescheduled monthly Mental Health Matters. The idea that we're going to be discussing ethics in mental health and the ethics in our personal lives, ethics in our businesses, ethics in certain professions, I think almost go without even being questioned. It's a given. But is it at times that we understand the importance of why ethics is so crucial and fundamental to the operation, both the client and the customer. So good afternoon again. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Borden.
No, thank you for having us on. And I think that this year we've got a bit of a different focus, looking a lot more at the practice of mental health and therapy, the practice of therapy and mental health services in Cayman. So I really appreciate this conversation. I think it's a really important one. We often talk about how in Cayman people are not as we call psychologically minded, meaning that we're not always as familiar with not only mental illness but mental health services. And so with this, it's going to give us a chance to look at the rules, right, and guidelines that are provided to mental health professionals who are practicing in Cayman, so that all the providers should be aware of it, but to have the community be more informed, about a lot of the terms we use, like confidentiality. What does it mean? Why is it important? Right. And if there are concerns, what are you able to do?
I think as an analogy,
to address that,
we're going now to have a census. 10/10/21 is the launch date. It was going to be last year, but I think last year didn't exist. I don't think anybody had a birthday last year, so we'll whip that from our memories. But in the census, we know that the statistics law make that it's going to be confidential. The information is only accessible in a certain way to certain people within the ESO. That level of confidentiality. But then there's also an ethics and an expectation, and the training that the enumerators will receive would ensure that they understand you get this information, but you keep it. And the reason you keep it is to preserve the confidentiality, but to maintain the trust in the system. Very much like what we're doing when the therapist, the counselor, the psychologist, it has a client there sharing something. It's confidential, but it's more than that. There's a ethical consideration. Hey, we're keeping this confidential because of this. Right, Ms. Shannon?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really important topic, and I'm glad to have been invited to participate. And I think it's one in which I think the field has matured quite a bit and has grown, and I think
I'd agree.
There's been a lot of conversations in terms of increasing understanding. And I think it's something that is fluid, right? There's always sort of ways to learn or improve or understand. And I like, Lexi, what you had said about wanting to make sure that the consumer was informed, because I think sometimes there's a need there for people to really be able to understand what their rights are, and then to be able to advocate or to take action when if they feel like the treatment or the interaction that they've had or their information hasn't been held in confidence.
Agreed.
And as I listen to you, I recognize that sometimes we don't appreciate that way back when, we would say, that two people would meet and a handshake sealed the deal.
Yeah.
They didn't have to have, Philadelphia lawyers to prepare it. They didn't have to have countless pages
Yes.
and, sub-paragraphs. Your word was your bond.
Yeah.
That's ethics. That's
Yes.
integrity. Now, okay, we will formalize it and make it better, but it still comes down to you sharing something with someone, and in this space, that thing that is personal, private, significant to that individual, they can feel this confidence that it's going to be protected and preserved.
Yeah.
But do we, as Dr. Bob was sharing, as a public, appreciate how significant that is, that you have it as a customer, that client, however you term yourself, that this is going to be, the order of the day. But then you as the professional, the practitioner, that yes, don't worry, I am keeping this confidential because it's the integrity of the system, but it's the ethical thing to do.
Yeah. Well, anyone who handles private information, it's important. I mean, we see it with the lawyers as well, the lawyer-client privilege. We see it with the pastors and the churches as well. I'd say because the kind of conversations that we have, and because our work, so not only mental health, but especially in therapy. So psychiatrists also rely on the relationship, but they have a few other tools as well. Talk therapy, it is primarily the relationship, and so having that safe place and that trust and that confidence that what you're discussing is going no further is even more important.
At some point, maybe I could ask then, we are of the view that there is certain privileges, I use that word deliberate, the lawyer-client privilege, the doctor-patient confidentiality. And we expect that will be preserved and maintained, even if courts were to inquire. And I wonder sometimes if that level of privilege, that level of confidentiality should also extend to maybe other relationships, barring where, some significant crime has been committed, where some person is in jeopardy of injury or the like. Without knowing better, does it also apply to therapists and client counselor and client psychiatrists and client psychologists and client? Does that level of confidentiality and privilege that the lawyers have with their clients equally apply to your profession?
I would say ours might actually supersede that.
Okay.
I mean, in the States, it's considered protected health information, PHI, and so there's going to be state laws that govern it, as well as federal laws that govern protection of protected health information. And so there's been a lot of changes around who can access file records, and that it used to be actually quite difficult for clients even to access their own records. They've definitely moved a lot more towards through HIPAA laws to allow the client to be able to access their records more easily. But there's many rules that govern what happens to the information that we keep, the records that we keep. We have to keep progress notes or medical records, and they're not allowed to be disclosed to anyone. Reasons that confidentiality would be broken are a few, such as things like suicidal or homicidal intent, child abuse, or inability to care for themselves, which are special circumstances. But in general, it shouldn't be shared with anyone. Certain information may go to like an insurance company, or if there's a court order. And there's actually a lot of protection in it for the psychologist and for the files, even if there's even if the courts are trying to get it. But I think our data is very well protected. That's what I'm going. Where I'm going with that.
I think we'll see across jurisdictions that there may be certain differences in respect to the legislation, and as we mature as a jurisdiction, maybe we'll increasingly understand the importance of having those protections, but have those protections well known and accepted by the populace. Maybe we can talk at some point in this whole thing of ethics amongst the profession, the notion that we have data protection legislation, but how is that access? Why is it so important to protect it? And even to the point, Dr. Borden, you made relative to the client accessing the notes of the psychologist, for instance.
Well, and I will say there are some caveats to that as well, in that if release of the notes to the client is going to cause harm, then the psychologist generally can can make a recommendation that the records only be released to another professional. So if they decide to move to another psychologist or another therapist, then their notes may be released that way. Right. So there's levels and intricacies to it that is for us to know. I think that the main thing would be to know that legally we are bound to not share information.
All right, well, let's continue after this break, ethics in mental health, and look at our regulatory bodies, their functions and the like, and to give people a sense of not just comfort, but greater understanding as to why it is and the importance of it. Again, to our listeners, a late start. We can blame it on the rain, not like a villain, Villa Manili. I know the name, but I was thinking about what Bob Marley said. Or we said, some people feel the rain, others just get wet. Something to think about. Let's pause and take a break. When we come back, more talk today.
Freedom, Cayman Rack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Please be advised that the pension contribution holiday has been extended until 30th of June 2021. Employers and plan members should ensure arrangements are in place for salary deductions and remittance following this date. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan, keeping you informed. For further information, visit chamberpensions.ky, and for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. We're here for you. You can now renew your driver's license or motor vehicle license online, and you don't need an ESID number. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Visit www.dvdl.gov.ky. At Subway, we know a meal isn't quite complete without a side, and that's why we're introducing waffle fries. Subway's waffle fries are oven-baked softness with extra crispy edge, giving a satisfying taste to be enjoyed as is or in any of Subway's dipping sauces. Order waffle fries as a side item for $2 or make it a meal deal. Subway, eat fresh.
The La Masque Dinner Show, an elegant evening of fine dining, live entertainment, and more at the Kimpton Seafire Resort, Saturday, June 5th, 7 p.m. to midnight. Tickets are just $150 each on eventpro.ky or visit Les Classiques to book a table of 10. Proceeds to benefit the HSA's dialysis unit. The La Masque Dinner Show, a signature Batabanu event, June 5th at the Kimpton Seafire Resort. See you there.
Want your kids to gain social skills, independence, self-confidence indoors? King Sports Center Art of Fun Summer Camp is the solution. Make memories, learn new skills and life skills. Activities include basketball, football, dodgeball, arts and crafts, squash, drama, kids aerobics, bowling, and much, much more. King Sports Center Art of Fun Summer Camp will be held from July 6th through August 6th. July 6th through August 6th. Monday to Friday from 8:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. Camp includes all activities, 1 lunch, and 2 breaks. The early bird special ends on May 31st. For more information, call 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky. Your one-stop facility for fitness, recreation, relaxation.
Work Jobs Cayman has a new look. Registered users can now experience a more user-friendly platform, allowing for easier registration and posting of job ads. To see and experience the new look today, visit www.work.ky. That's WORC.ky.
Talk today.
but I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome, Mike. And thanks again for your patience, your love, and your willingness to participate in our discussions. And I think our monthly Mental Health Matters show, not able to, only facilitated by Dr. Alexandria Borden, but it helps us through the people that attend from time to time, and Miss Shannon Seymour. Thanks equally for sharing over. This afternoon it rained so hard I even got my hair wet. It was amazing. It took all about 2 seconds to dry, but it still got wet. But this month's discussion, as we reschedule it, ethics and mental health, I think we may at times gloss over that word ethics. And I always add ethics and integrity because they go hand in hand in my mind. But we take for granted sometimes that, well, it is. But is it? As I be guided by you, maybe you can help us to share. There are many things that may present as gray areas for certain things. I think of doctors and researchers who might say, well, stem cell therapy, how is that extracted? Is it for the greater good? Is it, okay to do that? Are there religious and philosophical reasons, even medical considerations? Perhaps that obtains equally in the practice of mental health. But I'll be guided by you. Yeah. So share with us.
Well, you definitely touched on that things are not always as black and white as we would like them to be. And I'd say it's even more difficult when there are so many different levels of ethical standards as well. Not only personally, but by the actual by the ways that we're licensed and the regulatory bodies that there are. And so that's where I think it's important to know the ethics and the standards, but also to have resources around to be able to consult with. Right, whether it's colleagues. So Ms. Shannon and I are the founders of the Cayman Islands Psychological Association. So it's something we're hoping to be able to support providers with at some point. I know anyone to be licensed in Cayman, there's a few caveats there as well, but generally people who are licensed here are licensed somewhere else as well. And so there's not only the standards here, but also the standards of the other country where we're registered. So I'm also licensed in the U.S. So I'm not only governed by Cayman and the Council for Professions Allied with Medicine, which is CPAM on island, but also I'm licensed in Maryland, so I'm also governed by Maryland Board, as well as the Maryland Psychological Association, as well as the American Psychological Association. There's a lot of people making sure I do the right thing.
Which
but
is
there's
good.
also a lot of resources with that. MPA has an ethics committee that I'm able to call and consult with as well, which is helpful.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, as you talked about, it's not always black and white. Immediately, I think of Billy Joel's song "Shades of Grey," and sometimes we don't see how instructive music and the lyrics of the storyteller can be, in particular. But that is in business. That's in our personal lives. But when we think of a practice as important as yours, those shades of grey can be telling. It can be instructive, but it can also maybe hinder and hamper. I'm not sure.
It can. I think it can do both, and I think ethics is not something in my practice anyways, is not something that you kind of learn, tick a box, and then put it on a shelf. It is a daily, it's a fluid, present entity, I think, in any mental health field or mental health space, where you're kind of always sort of talking about this issue of what is ethical and what is, what is the best thing for this individual, and what are those parameters, and what does the policy say, and how does that fit? And I think one of the things that I think is really valuable or beneficial is the ability to have those dialogues, because for example, a very clear one that comes out of most regulations is this issue of dual relationships. And so as a mental health professional, we're sort of taught from the very beginning that you should not be treating somebody as a mental health professional who you have another relationship with. Now in Cayman, that can become very difficult, because how do you define another relationship? Is it somebody that you sit 2 pews behind at church? Is it somebody who is the parent of a child that's in the classroom that your child is in? Is it a family member? Is it one of your colleagues' brothers? So back in the day, in particular, I mean, our population's gotten bigger, so it's gotten a bit easier, right? But back in the day, those were really, really tricky conversations to have. And I participated in an ethical discussion a couple of years ago at a conference, and there was a psychologist from other small island nations, and we were looking often at the policies that come out of big organizations, written in countries like Canada or the UK or the USA, and how do you take that and then apply it to a population where there are 50,000 people and limited resources. And so there's a decision-making tree that kind of happens professionally where, yes, one ethical criteria or standard says don't have dual relationships, but then there's also another ethical expectation that if you have the ability to help, you help. And so, you know, if I can help and there's maybe nobody else that has it was more so back in the day, right? We're very fortunate now to have a growing community. But I think this idea of ethics as being something that's alive as opposed to something that is on a shelf and we just have to memorize it and tick a box. But how are we really sort of bringing ethics on a daily basis into our work? And I think there's probably on a daily basis we would have to we have discussions all the time. Okay, what do you think about this? What about this? And that's really healthy to be able to challenge yourself and hold each other accountable. Go back and consult the policies and procedures books, but make it a living thing, make it a part of the everyday practice.
All right, when we come back from a news break, let's get into that, because I think sometimes as you were sharing, a number of things come to mind, and in that sharing information and those ethical dilemmas and the notion that, you know, we have to always preserve patient confidentiality to protect your data, but then the outcome, end of the day, is what is best for the client, the customer, that individual for whom we're trying to do the best thing. How does that all interplay? Is it black and white as we expect it to be? Is it okay to have shades of grey, as Bill Joel talks about? Is it a case that is, well, I'll ask you, is it fluid or dogma? Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Spread the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
From Radio Cayman's newsroom, I'm Shanda Gallego with your latest headlines. Government reports 3 positives for COVID-19 from the 385 COVID-19 tests since Tuesday. There have been 79,344 COVID-19 vaccinations given in total in the Cayman Islands. 66% of the population have had at least 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. 56% have completed the 2-dose course. Turning to international news now, China has denounced U.S. efforts to further investigate whether COVID-19 came from a Chinese lab. U.S. President Joe Biden has called on intelligence officials to redouble their work to find out how the virus was first transmitted to humans. China's foreign ministry accused the U.S. of political manipulation and blame shifting. It has rejected any link between COVID-19 and a virus research lab in the Chinese city of Wuhan. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden's top trade negotiator spoke for the first time with her Chinese counterpart by phone on Wednesday. It's a sign that Washington and Beijing may be ready to pick trade talks back up, even as relations between the two remain tense. U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai had a candid virtual meeting with Chinese Vice Premier to discuss the importance of the trade relationship between the two nations, according to Tai's office. And an international team of researchers have created the largest and most detailed map of the distribution of so-called dark matter in the universe. The results are a surprise because they show that it is slightly smoother and more spread out than the current best theories predict. The observation appears to stray from Einstein's theory of general relativity, posing a conundrum for researchers. The results have been published by the Dark Energy Survey Collaboration. Those are your latest headlines here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Happy 38th anniversary, Le Classique. That's right, Le Classique is celebrating 38 years of business. To mark this milestone, come celebrate Le Classique's 38 years in business with up to 38% off store-wide. Every shoe, every wallet, every carry-on, every handbag, every belt, everything store-wide, up to 38% off. This Thursday, Friday, Saturday, only up to 38% off store-wide at Le Classique, located in the Strand Shopping Center. Happy 38th anniversary, Le Classique. See you there, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us. And I'm very grateful to the individuals who allow themselves to come and be a part of our discussions on a daily basis. And every month for our monthly Mental Health Matters, Dr. Borden, to you and to the team that you always assemble for helping us to appreciate the importance of our health and well-being, and including, and certainly not undervaluing our mental health. And Shannon Seymour for being part of this month's discussion, but in the past as well. So ethics in mental health. If I could just revisit a comment you shared, ethics fluid in this sense. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, is it fluid or is it dogma? Is it that this thing is ethical and it will always be ethical no matter what?
I think it's probably like the law, right? Like you apply the law to different situations, and every situation is unique. So I think we have a standard of practice, a code of practice, a set of ethical principles that we adhere to, and we want to stick to them, and that's one of the things that we promote, and it's part of professional integrity. My thing is, though, that it has to be integrated into, it has to be something that's real and living as opposed to rigid and stagnant, because I think as our community has changed, as services have changed, as legislation has changed, so too do practices, right? And so when I first started practicing as a mental health provider here, we would do a lot of community groups. So we would be at the various health clinics, and we'd be outside often and under a tree. And some people would argue that wasn't confidential because somebody could drive past and see, right? So those are the kind of things that have evolved, and we, I think we've taken the approach of can we just sit down and discuss it? Because I do think, we said earlier, there's that intersection between ethics and culture. And we deal with this a lot. I'll give you a really good example. Somebody the other day brought a gift. So ethically speaking, receipt of gifts is not encouraged. It would be a breach of ethics. It's not appropriate. It creates something in the therapeutic relationship, right? But to say to this person, I can't take your gift, holy moly, that was culturally offensive. So that becomes a dilemma. On one hand, we have this very clear ethical practice, and on the other hand, we have this very clear cultural practice. And which one takes precedence? Which one wins? And so in the end, we didn't accept the gift. We explained why, and we encouraged, or we came, I think they said that we would donate it to something. And so but it really required a conversation, and it couldn't just be like, we can't, that's our policy. Tick box on the shelf. It really required a conversation, a discussion, because it was more than just saying this is our policy. It was like, how does that fit within a cultural understanding of what this means to that person, and would that do harm to the relationship we'd spent years building?
I think that's where it's important. Like, I always think of the vessel coming into a harbor. It goes on the local knowledge. You get the harbor pilot to bring it, because they know the waters, the reefs, the punch holes, and the lake. It isn't just to preserve the jobs in the lake, but you benefit from that. To your example, that may have been a top corn bread that they were bringing that they spent hours making.
That one I would accept.
I would as well. I would as well. But then you're not soliciting it, but you don't want to receive this gift to undermine or compromise the ethical considerations.
It's tricky.
And that's where every situation is different. I think that's where you're talking about it being fluid, is that, and you always do the best that you can.
Yes.
And so that's what my belief is. So long as I can explain where I was coming from, and and I can explain why I thought this was going to be most helpful,
right.
Then that's the best that you can do. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we might get it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where we should all be looking out for each other. Like, can we talk about what just happened? To be able to give colleagues maybe a different insight or a different perspective of what's going on.
There's a spirit of the law, and there's the letter of the law, and how do we meld the two? I think this is where, as I can see in your space, client comes in, there's a discussion about something, you speak to a colleague. I want to maybe ask her that in the vein that, let's say within a banking relationship, or maybe within the policing, for instance, the two bank officers or employees are talking, or the two people in the police space are talking about something. Someone nearby, maybe a colleague, maybe a customer, is listening, and they pick up bits and pieces, or you're not sufficiently conscious of who is around.
Sure.
And they may not get the full story, but they may get, they're talking about John.
Yeah.
Totally unaware of the context, and then that takes out. So even there, that relaying information can create a challenge.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lynn.
It's on the professionals to try to avoid that as best as we can, and to be conscious. And that's why I tell the people I work with, you need your counselor or your therapist hat on at all times in Cayman. It's hard because as it was pointed out to me, with confidentiality, we don't even acknowledge clients in the community, and that was something I offended many people when I came home. I trained in America, and we don't talk to clients. But for me, just to walk by without saying anything actually really upset people, which is why I also have this conversation very early on with clients. The fact that they even know me from my practice is their private information. Right. I wouldn't want them to become uncomfortable. If I say hello, people might ask how they know me.
There you go too.
And so then they have to explain.
Yeah.
And so with that, I let them know that if I see them, I'm not going to say anything. They're welcome to talk to me if they'd like, but I won't say anything otherwise. But it's important to share that. And so it's, but with that, and sometimes there might be some crossover, and we'll have a plan. If I run into you at school or at the horses or at the gym, if you want to say anything, this is what we'll say.
Yeah.
It's a small community.
You have to, you have to make adjustments to where you're working and to do the best that you can for the client and educate them on what's to be expected.
Yeah.
There's the idea that the professional has a certain level of power in the situation, and that's where the gift giving is not always is generally not practiced. I agree. There are certain times where you have to weigh it out.
Yeah.
If I could, wait, sorry.
Okay, but it's on the professionals to maintain that. Even like when I run groups, I tell people I am ethically and legally bound to not share, but it's up to the group members to maintain their confidentiality. So we operate under the Vegas rule. What happens in group stays in group.
Yeah.
We don't tell other people who's in group. We don't tell people what they said in group. And that's for everyone to feel safe. I think too often in Cayman, we think everyone knows everyone else's business. And what I've heard is that, that I think before there was more regulations, it was a bit more lax with things, but we're really trying to up the integrity of the field in general so that people can trust that when they go see a practitioner, the practitioner is licensed and does abide by a code of conduct and will keep the information private.
Yes.
With that then, that licensing and the code of conduct, two things. We've always been told, well, you can't legislate for ethics, for morality. You can have a code of conduct. You can have a law that says, well, if you disclose this information, even inadvertently, there can be consequences. There's a law there. But then the ethics seem to supersede what is accepted as the legal sort of principle. But can you legislate, and in so doing, for example, well, don't disclose this information in a circumstance other than, and when you do, it has to be this way and to this entity. Can you legislate for ethics, or is something that is?
I don't know if you can. That's a question I'm not sure of the answer. What we do know is that as licensed healthcare professionals, the consumer has a pathway for complaints. If a client or a consumer of any healthcare feels like they've had their confidentiality breached, they feel like their information has been shared, whether inadvertently or intentionally, there are pathways where they can go to the Council for Professionals Allied with Medicine, which falls under the umbrella of the Health Practice Council, and they can lodge a complaint, and there will or should be an investigation of that professional, and they should have to explain themselves, and then a decision made in terms of what might be a consequence. And I would imagine there would be a time when if a breach was serious or there was some I don't know what the circumstance would have to be, but somebody would lose their ability to license. It's a privilege to be able to work in this field and to practice in this community, and so the standards are there to hold us accountable to them.
The sanctions have to be something then. And I wrote down licensing because I wanted to ask two things. Maybe I'll start with the first, the second question first. This idea that where there's licensing and there's accountability and there's a consequence. So, person X as a licensed practitioner has done something, the regulatory authority has intervened following a complaint, determined that, this is definitely a breach, warrants suspension or censure or something. But maybe in some communities, if it may transpire that there's a perception, well, nothing's going to happen anyway, and when it does, it just be a slap on the wrist because of all the things that we fit in, knowingly or unknowingly. Are we getting to a point where, whether it's the lawyers, the doctors, the accountants, any profession, and now since we're talking in mental health, that is going to be the case? There's a confidence that by the populace that if something transpires that's egregious, there's going to be a proper inquiry, and then the requisite sanctions are going to be meted out.
I think so. I mean, I'd like to believe that is a confidence that the community has. I think that there are precedents. There is precedence for situations in which people were removed from a registration because of breaches or conduct.
Well, and I'd say it starts with knowing what your rights are, right? So in therapy, we have something called informed consent, and that is that stack of paperwork that we give everyone. I'm not sure if anyone actually reads. Some people do. Some people have come and asked me questions, but that goes through what your rights are in therapy. What to expect. It does go through like fees and how that works, protection of your medical information, but to give people an understanding of what's there. And so if there are concerns, then if you are working with a therapist or any kind of mental health, any medical provider really, and there are concerns, I'd suggest if you're comfortable reaching out to them first, if you're okay with it, ask. I noticed this. I'm wondering, what happened there. If you're comfortable, if not, then by all means, CPAM regulates therapists, counselors, psychologists, social workers. Most of the providers in mental health, and they can be, so all of the boards can be reached at hpbusers@gov.ky. CPAM regulates those fields. Psychiatrists would be under the Medical Dental Council. And they are, right now, it would just be contacting them if you have questions or concerns. We are hoping to put in a more easier access way of being able to formally do a complaint if needed.
All right. We're going to quickly pause to take a short break. But when we come back, could we ask the second question about licensing? You just referenced therapists, counselors, psychologists, and there may be even social workers. So when we look at this, for the individual that I'm going to talk to a professional about an issue, just want to get into a better space. Well, are you talking to a psychologist, a counselor, or a therapist? And if so, is there a difference? And is there a difference relative to licensing and consequence? Or is it just that we lump them all together and it's, many words but mean the same thing, or are they different? Can we talk about that for a bit?
For sure.
All right. We're going to pause and take a break, and if you're so inclined, well, please join us after.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Carl Esmond Scott, JP, 1909 to 2002. Pastor Carl Esmond Scott was born in Spot Bay, Cayman Brac. He married Violet Rosa Scott, with whom he had 8 children. He made outstanding contributions to the island as a pastor, marriage officer, justice of the peace, carpenter, and distinguished seaman and engineer on the M.V. Kirksons for the Kirkconnell family. In carrying out his pastoral duties, he counseled, advised, and assisted many families in various ways. He was known to many as a jack of all trades, as he used his God-given talents to help the needy, the lost, and the straying.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Happy 38th anniversary, Le Classique. That's right, Le Classique is celebrating 38 years of business. To mark this milestone, come celebrate Le Classique's 38 years in business with up to 38% off store-wide. Every shoe, every wallet, every carry-on, every handbag, every belt, everything store-wide, up to 38% off. This Thursday, Friday, Saturday, only up to 38% off store-wide at Le Classique, located in the Strand Shopping Center. Happy 38th anniversary, Le Classique. See you there, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thank you for joining us. It is, our month of mental health matters, and I know the last year has us all askew. This is the month of May, I think. It is not the first Monday in May that we normally have the show, I think. I better check to make sure. Today's the 27th of May, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's a
we'll
Thursday.
Be back again soon.
Okay, just so you're not listening to a rerun, your calendar isn't askew. Your thoughts might be like somewhere else, but that's a different story. We can tell you about that later. No, I'm very grateful to Dr. Alexandria Borden for able to facilitate on a monthly basis, and to you, Ms. Shannon Seymour, and all of that, I guess. But today, especially to you for joining us. This is a topic, the idea of ethics in general, but ethics in mental health, because it can, and it does impact the practice from the provider and the professional's perspective, but also from the client. Knowing the confidentiality is one thing, but understanding the importance. So. We were sharing just before the break.
Yeah, so you're asking about the different professions. I'll say anyone that's working ethically is responsible and needs to is responsible for being able to explain their credentials and their licensing and their training.
Okay.
So depending on the kind of therapy we do and the kind of training we have, we may or may not share personal information about ourselves, but we are ethically obligated to explain our credentials and our training. So you should be able to find out if someone is a psychologist or a counselor, a psychotherapist, a psychologist. We should be able to talk about what that means, how our trainings are different. We all have different levels of training, and different approaches as well. And so that's we actually did a whole show on that as well.
Yeah.
But psychologists will be licensed either master's or doctoral level. We tend to focus, I'd say we tend to deal more with the more severe mental illness. We tend to do assessments. So that's where we are. Mental health counselors will take more of they're counselors, they do more of a wellness approach to things, and tend to deal with less severe problems than we tend to do. I will say it depends on experiences and training as well. So there are a few counselors that actually specialize with some of the more severe disorders. Typically, this is going to be how it works. Social workers are actually licensed different levels. They can be licensed bachelor's or master's level to do social work, which is going to be more like case management. They work with DCFS to do the child abuse investigations. They work with probation. They follow up with clients and parole. So that's typical social work. Clinical social workers are licensed to do therapy as well, and they tend to take more of a community-based approach to things. Marriage family therapists actually take more of a systemic view, and some of the others will take systems views as well. But marriage family therapists tend to do more couples, families therapy, and even when they're working with individuals, will take a systemic approach to what's going on. So it's more of a the training varies by level as well as by the approach, but even by personality. So I'd say if you need to make sure that you click with the person that you're working with, but any of us should be able to explain the differences in what's going on. And you should be able to ask if we're licensed.
Okay.
Anyone you see in Cayman for therapy should be licensed. And that will be through either CPAM or a medical dental council.
And that medical dental council tends to be more of the medical
That's a psychiatrist,
doctors,
right? That's the medical
and
doctors.
And
exactly.
The other one's the council,
the Council for Professions Allied with Medicine.
Right. And I appreciate that because I think sometimes as customers, just use that word generally, whether you're a patient or whether you're a client, you're paying for a service, you're seeking out. We don't advocate for ourselves. We don't, not only do we not know our rights, but we don't have the confidence to ask a question. But what are your credentials? What is the service or product that you're offering?
And I think that's I think that's a significant responsibility on the part of an ethical mental health professional. Okay. And so when we are behaving ethically, we are going to recognize that, and we're going to work to bridge that. And so one of the things that I think most professionals do or should is, Lexi alluded to it, but it's informed consent. So at the very beginning of the journey of therapy, you would have a client come in and they would obviously have some forms filled out, but you would explain those forms to them, and you would say, this is what this means and this is what this means. And in our forms, we have the information for CPAM, and if you have any complaints or concerns or you feel like at any point your rights have been breached, please, this is the number you call, this is the email you call. So very transparent, and it's sort of like trying to work to empower them and to say, well, I can't share anything without your written consent. I always, in my practice, because adolescence can be, again, another sort of gray area, we'll have adolescents in that meeting so that we're making sure that parent and adolescent all understand. So there's no like, well, I thought it meant that and I thought it meant that. We're all in the same room together, so there's that transparency. So we're trying to, we understand the challenges, and we understand that people often feel like, oh, I can't ask that question, or I feel uncomfortable, but I don't want to say anything because they're the professional. And we work really hard in our practice to try to recognize it and then be responsible for doing something about it. So that responsibility doesn't lie with the client; it lies with the professional.
Yeah, I think Cayman is getting more vocal and more willing to ask questions than they were when I initially came home, which I think is really good and really important. But you'd also asked about like legislating ethics, and I think that anyone that's in a helping profession like we are, the ethics are there to protect the clients, really, right? And so really to be an ethical professional is really to follow the rules and the guidelines that are there, lets you do the best therapy that you can.
And I think we have legislation for certain things that helps us. We look at health and safety at work. We may look at planning legislation that allows buildings, and for us as the users of those buildings to have a confidence of the structural integrity. Things happen, for different reasons. But I'm wondering to what extent licensing generally, sometimes, if I can just use the local parlance, can be watered down. Are we at risk at times of, well, this one, that one, and the next one licensed, but then not all apples are sweet, all right? There might even not be an apple sometimes, but it hides this one. So in our licensing, as we raise the standard of excellence and the duty of care, are we ensuring that everyone who is licensed, that minimum criteria isn't so...
So if I can, I will say CPAM, so I am chairperson of that now, is a registering body. We don't have our own licensing exam or anything. And I think, and we manage, actually we counted 46 professions. There's many professions that we manage. And so we're not going to be experts in all of them. We have many professions. And so which comes with a range of ethics. We also license from 7 jurisdictions, 7 different countries: U.S., U.K., let's see if I can get them all now, U.S., U.K., Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and Jamaica. 7.
You got it right.
7 jurisdictions, thank heavens. So you have to be licensed or registered there for independent practice to be able to be licensed here. which means that not only do we have this range of professions, so in the States it's master's or doctoral level, but there's a lot of other levels that are coming in from other countries, which is where it is fair to ask, where did you do your training? What did the training involve? Because CPAM, we make sure that everyone is eligible for independent practice, and we do hold everyone to the code of practice that we have, which is published and available I'll put a link to it on my website on drbodden.com, but it's also available under the Health Practice Commission's website, which means that there's a lot of even more variability in our field than there is in other countries.
I can see that.
Yeah, so that's where, and therapy, even if you have 3 doctoral level psychologists all doing CBT, there's going to be different personalities and different approaches. And that's where, the fit is going to be really important. But if you do have any questions about training or ethics or approaches or anything like that, definitely talk to the provider. The medical director should be known of the practice, and the Health Practice Commission. So CPAM MDC licenses the practitioners. The Health Practice Commission licenses the facility. So there's also another route to go and another level of accountability that Cayman has. And so how HPC requires that all practices, even if it's just a sole provider, has a way of being able to provide feedback. We have to provide surveys or forms to be able to provide feedback there, and HPC will check that. So that's another route that we have as well, to be able to give feedback to the person.
And I was just going to say, with the licensing of the facility, then there are additional expectations around how documentation is stored, how the space is structured. Is confidentiality maintained? How is safeguarding accounted for? And so there are a lot of things that go into licensing a facility that the owner of that facility would have to then take into consideration. And then somebody working for that facility, they have another level of regulation and oversight. And so we are becoming, I think, we're doing a good job of being able to say to a consumer of mental health services, no, the days of, your information being spread around town, because when I arrived here even 25 years ago, that was the general theme, was there was a real level of distrust. There was a real level of stigma, and a lot of it anchored around this fear that things were not confidential, that, I was going to go home with my, and sort of have a little rundown of everything that had happened. And I think over the years, those of us that have been around a long time and those that are coming in now, that are coming well trained from other they're bringing that standard, they're helping to elevate. We're all sort of working in the same vein, I think, to try to ensure the consumer. But I ultimately think there is a sense of consumer responsibility. And I like what Dr. Bodden said about asking questions, right? Asking for references, asking your doctor, your primary care physician, who would they recommend? So I think that those are important parts of being a responsible consumer, to be able to make sure that you do feel comfortable asking those questions. And if a clinician or a clinic can't answer those questions, then it's not the right place for you to be.
But also be discerning as a consumer. I mean, think of it, if you were going to have a meal, you may go to this new place, or maybe a place you go on to, you see a new dish, but maybe you'll ask questions because of food allergies. Maybe you have preferences for how spicy you like it or don't like it. Generally, we would ask questions, and hopefully we'll get appropriate answers because we've asked them properly.
Well, especially with therapy, where you're sharing your deepest secrets. If you have questions like, is my paperwork being maintained properly, or are you going home and sharing all this with your partner? You're not going to want to share, and therapy's not going to do well. And I think that's where a lot of people who took therapy back in the day will say, therapy didn't work for me. But if I may add as well, all practitioners are supposed to act within their scope of competence, which is what they're trained to do. So if someone does come in and it's something I don't do, I need to tell them, and I need to offer a couple other references of who's available. Or if there are some things that I do that the other places may have more resources for, or there may be someone who specializes in it. So ethically, I should share that information as well.
Right. As you said that too, I mean, we would quickly recognize with the doctor, the lawyer, even the accountant, but the doctor and lawyer, you go to a physician, and maybe it's your GP, is your primary care, but the issues with respect to the brain or the bone or the heart, and that's not their specialty, they'll refer. You go to a lawyer who does probate and estate work, but you need some litigator they'll say, well, my partner or another firm. Is it then that we're not cognizant enough of mental health field in respect to psychologists? So we're going to see someone, maybe we used the word therapy a number of times, and yet a therapist, well, what is that? And does that be inclusive of everybody, or is it specifically, as we identified, what level of therapy and what level of training and qualification and your core strengths, the competency? The consumer needs to be a little bit more discerning.
And I think that's changing. I mean, I certainly feel like we get asked a lot of questions. People want to know a bit about you. They want to understand where you've come from and what your training is. And I think the internet is out there, so anybody can Google nowadays and they're an expert, and they'll come and maybe they read about something and they want to know if you do that particular thing, or they want to make sure that you're not going to do that particular thing. And so I do think that the consumer is getting, they're becoming more involved and they're taking a greater level of responsibility and ownership. This is something I need for myself, and I'm going to ask the right questions to make sure it's what I want and what I deserve.
So then would it then be not just helpful for the industry and for the profession, but for the clientele? The regulatory body has used the technology in a website, and it's very instructive, informative, and does a greater job of saying, okay, this is what we are, this is the standard of excellence, this is the ethical consideration, these are the things. So the information is there. So as a prospective client, you have a first point of official contact to go to and say, well, these are the people who are licensed, they're right there and then. Is that where we are, where we're going?
I would say if you look at my American license, you can go to the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is where I'm licensed through. You can put in my name, it gives you my number, and it'll tell you if there's been any complaints about me. We are not to that point yet. But I think we have come a long way in the last few years. And I think HPC, CPAM have, I'm assuming the other councils, well, these are the two I know best, have done a really good job of tightening things down and streamlining things as best as we can. CPAM, if you give us a call, send us an email, then we'll let you know. We can tell you if someone's licensed or not. We do publish a registry every so often, so we're not quite as accessible
we're getting there
as some of the states, but we're definitely much further than we were before, and moving that way all the time. I'll say I know that for some practitioners, there are some things that I know that mental health professionals we've been wanting for a while, but it takes time to adjust the legislation and everything to have that then reflected in what we do.
But we've seen that with in construction, for instance, relative to the trades. We've seen it in so many other avenues that we're realizing what is best practice, but what is not only good for the profession, but for the clientele. Ms. Susan, she says we take a short break. I pay attention to her. She's like, dude, I thought she was telling me lunch was here. All right. I know you guys have one. You want to come back for a couple of minutes more and wrap it up?
Sure.
All right. Please rejoin us after the break.
When you're tight on time and budget, but big on flavor, Subway's Meal of the Day hits the spot. Enjoy daily meals on classic sandwiches like tuna, Black Forest ham, meatball marinara, and more. Starting at $6.25 for 6-inch meals and $8.75 for footlongs. You can get Subway's Meal of the Day. Enjoy a different sandwich on a different day for the same price. Mix it up with cookies or chips or waffle fries for the same price. Subway, eat fresh.
Cayman Drama Society's hilarious production of Noises Off by Michael Frayn, the funniest stage play ever written, opens on Thursday, 20th May. This PG-16 production will play Thursday, Friday and Saturday for 4 weeks, ending 12th June. Tickets will sell out fast, so secure yours today by going to www.cds.ky. Adults are $25 and students $15.
Healthcare Pharmacy, caring about your health for the past 25 years. Radio Cayman's premier health show.
Alzheimer's and dementia, are they the same disorder?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question.
For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
Is heard on Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. and on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Brought to you by Healthcare Pharmacy in Grand Harbor, where they care about your health. Transfer and refill your prescription online. Visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or call 947-8900. Healthcare Pharmacy, now with a new and second location in Governor's Square. The new Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor's Square is open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Healthcare Pharmacy, where they care about your health.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
The HSA Specialist Clinic has relocated to a new, modern, state-of-the-art facility at Smith Road Center to offer you a better patient experience. Receive care from top specialists in chiropractic, complementary and alternative medicine, neurology, ENT, urology, pain management, and more. Our orthopedic and telemedicine clinics remain at the Cayman Islands Hospital campus. Please remember to bring your own face mask when visiting any HSA location. Visit our website, hsa.ky, to learn more. At the HSA, you matter to us.
The 7 a.m. news, Monday through Friday, is proudly sponsored by CG Britke. Insurance, health, pensions, life, where people come first.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. It is our monthly Mental Health Matters, and we're going to be back with you very shortly. But this is so important that we want to make sure we don't miss it. Thanks again to Dr. Alexandra Borden and Ms. Shanna Seymour for joining us, for braving the rain. It was so hard, it even wet my hair. I can't believe that, man. But 2 quick seconds, it was dry. Ethics in mental health. Thanks for that topic, and appreciating that sometimes it is not easy for us to get there. But as we continue the discussion, you were sharing, Dr. Borden?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I know we've been talking a lot about how confidentiality and how important it is, but there are limits to confidentiality, which I alluded to earlier. So I just wanted to clarify. In general, things discussed in the room stay between you and the therapist. If you're a child, there may be some things, safety concerns that may be shared with the parent, and generally we'll go through that with you the first time we meet, so everyone's on the same page, like Ms. Shannon had said. In the case that there are concerns about safety, then we may have to violate confidentiality. So there are limits to confidentiality. If there are concerns that someone is suicidal and imminently a danger to themselves, we ethically and legally are responsible for their safety, which in this case, it is a life or death situation, and we have to get them to the hospital for an assessment. And this, I think, going through training, this is one of the hardest things, because I'm like, well, if I make someone go into hospital, they're not going to trust me again, and they may not come back. That's a reality of the situation. But at that situation, to lose the client to suicide or to death is going to be far worse. So then, as a practitioner, while the therapeutic relationship is very important, safety is what's most important at that stage. And then we are ethically responsible for getting the person to the hospital. If they're willing to go, awesome. If not, then we have to get the ambulance to take them there. So suicidal ideations is one. And I will say, if you talk about, I've worked with many people chronically suicidal. If you say there's suicidal thoughts, we don't put you in hospital. I should say we do a thorough assessment, and there's a lot of other options for increasing therapy sessions. Just talking about it, maybe the thoughts are there and it's not something you're planning on acting on. That's okay. There's an assessment process, but that is there, and your therapist will clarify this with you first session, anyone you meet with. Plans to kill someone else. Homicidal ideation is another thing where we may have to notify authorities. That one I've dealt with far less than I deal with suicide. Child abuse is the other one. And anyone who deals with children now on island, Cayman has done a very good job of this, that anyone who deals with children is a mandated reporter. If there's concerns that abuse or neglect might be happening, and our law now covers even emotional abuse, we have to report it to MASH. the multi-agency safeguarding hub. And so this is also something that we clarify. If there are those concerns, I try to work with the family, let them know. Remember, we talked about the beginning, this is one of those situations, I'm going to have to let them know. And so generally I try to work with them to get through that. Likewise with hospitalizing as well. If the client would be willing to go, then it can actually be really helpful to the therapeutic relationship that we are able to work through this together, that I'm able to be there to support them in the most difficult times. But whatever it is, child safety with abuse and neglect is what's most important. The client's life in a situation of suicide is most important. So those are some limits. Also, if you come in not of your own accord, if you're coming in if you're court mandated, there may be certain information that has to be reported back. If you're coming in mandated by your workplace, there may be certain information that has to be reported back. If you're coming in for an assessment by your workplace or court or for some other reason, there may be information that has to be reported back. And so the therapist should be able to, or the clinician at that stage, should be able to tell you what information stays between you and what stays confidential and what part has to be released. I've had clients that I've worked with, maybe on probation. I just have to let them know if they're coming. And many EAP programs work like that as well. Actually, many EAP programs, they just give numbers. They don't even have to say who's coming to access it. But if you are referred for, maybe there's been difficulties at work for anger management or something like that, we may have to give an update on progress as well if you've been attending and participating. But whatever is needed, I find that out before I meet with the client. And then I let the client know if this is what I have to say back to them. Everything else stays between us. And if for any reason that changes, then that needs to be discussed with the client as well.
And I think this is where we need to start to appreciate that our health and well-being should be paramount. Our safety and security you shared, and let us get to a space where we speak to the psychologist so that we get the help that we need, that level of therapy. Sometimes just talking through something is so beneficial.
For sure.
I mean, think of it from the financial perspective. You're running numbers in your head of your budget. I make $5 a month. I got to spend this, and this. But if you write it down and you take your calculator or your spreadsheet, or you can do it by hand if you're really good, and you actually see it, it actually is beneficial, right? But sometimes talking to someone helps you to hear and to appreciate an objective perspective, and then to have the ethical considerations there.
And the dual relationships part is there so we can be honest as well. And the confidentiality. When you talk to a therapist or a counselor, psychologist, whichever the professionals you end up going to, it's a safe place. It doesn't go anywhere else. And we don't have a vested interest. That's why we don't do therapy with friends or family members, because I have opinions too. And even when my friends call me and I'll say, do you want my opinion as your friend or my opinion as a therapist?
Are you paying?
That's normally what differentiates. Because sometimes it does differ, which is why it's important, for the therapist to make sure that we're managing outside relationships. Sometimes I've had situations where, social circles change, jobs change, we have kids, and you might end up in a social circle with someone. And at that stage, we might take a joint decision. I'm not able to, there's too much crossover at this time. And I think it's best if we maybe transfer your therapy to someone else, and they might say, hey, I run into you everywhere. Could we maybe look at starting this with someone else? Exactly. And so that's where the relationship is paramount in that way.
Communication, it sounds like, is key.
That's absolutely, I think, a big thing. If you are engaged in any kind of mental health service, you should be able to have these conversations openly and freely, and you should be able to ask your clinician or your psychologist how they operate. What do you do in these circumstances? What do you think about this situation? And that person should be very comfortable answering those questions. If they don't have all the answers, they should be able to go to their supervisor and get those answers. But there should be at no point, if you have a question that's just kind of like sitting with you that's related to ethics or confidentiality or your information, that you should be able to freely ask that, and ask it until you feel like you have an answer that is suitable to you.
And I'm very appreciative, though, maybe in recognizing this is an ongoing discussion, and I certainly appreciate monthly being able to have this conversation. But we talked about CPAM, we talked about the NDC, HPC. Well, the acronyms aside, is there a website or websites? Is there somewhere where people just generally can go and look at it? Now, the HPC is the Health Practitioners Commission.
There
the MDC is the Medical and Dental Council.
There's a Nursing Midwifery Council, the Pharmacy Council. I'm going to pull it up because
it's DHC, isn't it?
DHRS.
Yeah.
Department of Health and Regulatory Services.
Regulatory Services.
.ky.
.gov.ky.
Yeah, just want to make sure. And then in there you can find the guidelines and forms, and all the councils are listed. I've actually said the CPAM Code of Practice is listed there. All the application information for people who are looking to get licensed. We've also done the Psychological Association. There's a lot of other associations that are helpful. If anyone is looking to get licensed or looking at moving to Cayman, or students coming up, we love the students, trying to get information on how to get licensed. We're all happy to help with that. But dhrs.gov.ky, and then it's all listed there.
dhrs.gov.ky.
I'll put it on drbond.com as well with our information too.
And I appreciate it because I think if, as you shared at the outset, if you're a practitioner, as perhaps as part of the ethical consideration is putting forward, these are my credentials, this is my licensing, and this is my scope of competency, and then you develop that relationship with that person based on trust and confidentiality and the like, and then you move it forward.
Yeah. And everybody's license should be on display, so you should be able to walk into an office and see it, and if you don't see it, you should be able to ask for it.
Okay.
HPC requirement.
Yeah.
But there it is too, because I know at one point businesses, just retail outlets, they didn't have their license there because they wanted to pay money for free. It was by law. You're licensed to carry on a business as. There was a time when the fee paid was visible too much anymore. I just look at that. But it's there for a reason, so that it's a licensed establishment.
Again, that confidence, that credibility, and to let the client or the consumer know that this is a company or an individual who's practicing within this parameter that's there for my protection.
How many of us go into an elevator and actually look for the certificate of operation? It has a particular name. And how many of us looked at it and realized, that expired last month?
Then we get out of the elevator.
But we get into it blindly, right? But if we do that,
I don't think I've actually ever looked.
You would not be the first.
It's part of the HPC stuff, so I've started looking as well.
But I look at those things. Maybe I'm just interested in information, but look at it. The information is there. We just never look for it. We never ask. We never feel empowered. Yeah. But it's also our responsibility.
Yeah. Well, there's so much information available online. APA has information up, which is the American Psychological Association, American Counseling Association, National Association of Social Workers. There's so many, and there's so much information out there. So do the research, but also know that we should be able to explain what comes in. So you may interpret it a bit differently than how we see it. So if you have questions, ask.
All right.
And any of us should be able to talk through what's going on. Try to find credible sites as well.
Great.
So the big national organizations are great resources.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming in. And it's a discussion that I think lends itself to us having a greater sense of confidence in the confidentiality and gives the profession more credibility, but then it appreciates that there can be greater access. So, whether it's the dhrs.gov.ky that we start with, whether we drbond.com to see where we can go, it's invaluable. So thanks very much.
Yeah.
Looking forward to next month. That seems so far away. That's almost, not this Monday coming, but the one following.
I'll be looking at men's mental health.
Men's mental health.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Huh. That'll be interesting, huh?
See? It's an important topic. Very important topic.
A listener requested it.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, this is why I'm glad to see that we're having more and more of this discussion publicly. People are starting to appreciate that it is significant to be able to have that resource and to have that conversation. Thank you very much, Ms. Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Borden. So, drborden.com. Any final thoughts, huh?
I guess we'll just do the general rundown. So the information is available at dhrs.gov.ky. That has all the local information. If anyone is interested in counseling or therapy, there are private practitioners like myself and Ms. Shannon, but there's also free services available from government, open to anyone on island, and that's available at the Counseling Center, 949-8789. And they're not doing walk-ins right now, but give them a call and they can set you up an appointment. So.
Please, look after your health in all aspects.
Definitely.
Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rain. I guess Bob Dollar always tells us some people feel the rain.
My yard's going to enjoy it. Yes. My grass.
Or they'll just get wet, Well, I love the rain. When we come back, some more talk today.
busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day? Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
The record.
For information that matters to you, the people. Hear from the government, the opposition, independents, and other experts on issues and solutions that affect you.
For the record.
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, tune into 89.9 and 93.9 FM from 7:30 to 9 a.m. for Cayman's new Straight Talk morning show. For the record.
I invite you to join me for the record. You are invited to be a part of this interesting and informative show. Embrace the opportunity to dialogue with your legislators, policymakers, and those charged with policy implementation.
For the record. Brought to you by
Coca-Cola. Available across the Cayman Islands from Tortuga Distributors.
Accept no substitutes. Taste the feeling with Coca-Cola.
That thing we've been saying for 64 years? Ignore it. Eat the KFC wings, drink the KFC gravy, fill up on fries. Just please forget the thing we normally suggest. You know, that thing you used to do with your tongue after finishing a delicious piece of our KFC chicken. We get it. It's not easy. There's a reason why it's been our slogan for over half a century. But the world's drastically changed of late, and as soon as we can embrace the change, the sooner we can all get back to doing what we do best. KFC. It's good.
It's not Toolfest again at A.L. Thompson's. Toolfest is the annual two-day event held since 2009. Not Toolfest is our travel-restricted version. Instead of 2 days, Not Toolfest is 2 weeks of the best prices of the year on select tools, buy one, get one offers, and a free laser level with tool purchases over $200. So plan now for a Not event that you cannot miss. May 21st through June 5th at A.L. Thompson's. It's not Toolfest, but it's almost as good.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
Radio Cayman, this is how we wake you up in the morning. Praise time on Radio Cayman.
Sing your praise to the Lord. Come on, everybody, stand up and sing one more. Hallelujah, give your praise to the Lord. We are united in Jesus Christ. We are the soldiers of the land.
Praise time.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
There's a meeting up in heaven. Roll call. It's a name in the name in the Lamb's book of life. Roll call, brother, sister. Roll call. If you don't stop shouting, if you don't stop dancing, we're going to put you out of our church.
Praise time.
Jesus in the morning, yeah.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
Your song flowed through my lips. Your work moved through my hands. Your thoughts stay on my mind. Live in me.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thank you for joining us. I know some days when the Thursday rolls around, you're thinking, wow, I'm almost at the end of the week. Well, you may have to work Saturday and Sunday. Perhaps we should consider what a 4-day work week would be like for the society, and not just only for the individual and the family, but for the economy. Now, I'll put that on the table again as a part of a discussion. We can talk about anything that you so choose. We invite you to be part. It's going to be open line now for the remainder of the program. Always grateful for our guests to come in and impart from their perspective, their wisdom, their knowledge, their experience, and of their expertise. Especially grateful to Dr. Alexandria Borden for what seems like a decade now doing this month, the mental health matters. The notion that our society is starting to appreciate the importance of not only having credible, competent, confidential spaces that we can go and talk to someone to assist us, but the notion that we are also appreciating that these conversations, very much like we have in publicly relative to our health and the discussion of cancers and other illnesses, that we are better if we can talk openly and publicly, freely, objectively, honestly, and informatively about these things. It makes us better. It doesn't mean that there are not issues, that we're still a bit tentative and reticent. It doesn't mean there are things that we still don't understand or fully appreciate or can even embrace. But if we can talk about it, maybe we can do something about it. Acknowledging perhaps is the first step to addressing. Well, what is that thing that we're not acknowledging, or that we're not even, if we have acknowledged, haven't addressed? Is it something in the political sphere? Is it something from a societal sort of woes that we're, that we don't talk about? Well, maybe it's time that we do so. Now the question is, can we do so respectfully and responsibly? Take, for instance, the things that are happening in our schools. And I want to maybe bring a couple of things to the table, and you tell me whether it is something that we want to discuss. We'll go back to the 4-day work week. It is not because people are necessarily lazy. It is because people understand, one, the greater sense of productivity, and two, the importance of health and well-being from the individual perspective, from the family, and then thereby the society. Think, for instance, how many of us, if we have a 40-hour week and we do 5 days at 8 hours a day, that's 40. But how many of us, by Wednesday, and certainly by Thursday, we've already had, 40 hours in the week, and we've only started Monday. Now, some of us, the week includes the 7 days. So we have started work from the Saturday as our shift rolls around, or we've started from Sunday. And, it's not necessarily that we're productive or more productive because we're spending more time at the desk or on the job, whatever that looks like. How many of us will share that, if we can do a lot between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., we don't have to spend as much time between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. So if you can work between 8 and 5, you don't have to necessarily work between 5 and 8. It's not necessarily the case for many people because of the disruptions. But then ask yourself equally. Let's just use Friday as an example. I think Fridays are the best day anyway. But let's say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You're working and you get your job done, you're servicing your clients. And then you have a 3-day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that you can, one day that businesses are open ordinarily, you can run your errands and do your thing. How many of us would take an extended lunch, even though we make up for it, more than adequately make up for it? But it's our mindset. If we have that one day available to us, it may be a Monday, it may not be a Friday, that we can go and do our personal things. Would we get more work done and be more focused in the office, knowing that that day rolls around, we can run about, irrespective of the technology that allows us to online bill pay? But maybe there are things we want to do. What about exercise and socializing? Well, we'll pause and take a break. When we come back, we can pick up that conversation. Let me put one other topic that was brought to us increasingly. The way our schools are being divided, the way our society is being segregated, the way the things that are starting to be cemented in our society is not necessarily a positive reflection. Well, let's see if we can talk about that. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Follow Radio K-Man on Twitter. All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Follow us at twitter.com/Radio K-Man.
Today's biggest news.
Radio K-Man. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio K-Man's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Shanda Gallego from Radio Cayman's newsroom. Tomorrow, May 28th, is the deadline for farmers to hand in applications for the Cayman Islands Farmers Assistance and Relief Measures Program. The program aims to provide economic support to the local farming community negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, stimulate interest in agriculture, strengthen the resilience of the farming community, and generally promote sustainable agriculture and food security. To apply for the Farmers Assistance Grant, contact Senior Policy Advisor Demoy Nash at 244-3152. Turning to international news now, French President Emmanuel Macron has asked Rwandans to forgive France for its role in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, in which about 800,000 ethnic Tutsis and moderate Hutus died. Speaking at the Genocide Memorial in Rwanda's capital, he said France had not heeded warnings of impending carnage and had for too long valued silence over examination of the truth. But France had not been an accomplice in the killings, Mr. Macron added. Rwanda's leader praised his speech. Australia's second most populous state, Victoria, will enter a 7-day lockdown to counter a fast-spreading outbreak in its capital. The lockdown will begin at midnight Thursday. Authorities have so far found 26 cases and identified 150 sites where people may have been exposed to the virus. There is growing anxiety over the outbreak, which reminds many locals of a devastating second wave that swept the state last year. And a growing storm over the origins in China of COVID-19 has explosive political implications for the United States at home and abroad, as well as the dueling legacies of two presidents that will be defined by the pandemic. U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday told Americans he had ordered U.S. intelligence agencies to report in 90 days on whether the virus originated not in animals and spread to humans, but might have escaped from a Chinese laboratory. Those are your latest headlines here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us as we invite you to be part of a discussion. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. And if you just joined us, and certainly if you don't mind us again extending our sincerest apologies for the little technical glitches earlier. A little late start, but I can honestly tell you that in earnest, both our engineer and Miss Susan and all their wonderful team here were assembled, furiously working to resolve what sometimes the rain, the weather, can impact us in sometimes. And technology is a great thing if it serves you, but it's not if you allow it to be the master. So when we recognize that the human touch, the human element is what is important, not unlike, or I prefer to say just like, the whole notion that communication and conversation is an art that is slowly being lost. And how many of us spend so much time in that digital domain that we ignore even that particular thing of that person that is right next to you, perhaps laying down in the same bed, seated on the couch next to you, or is your colleague working in the office or the cubicle right next to you. We don't see the perils and the plights. We don't understand or appreciate the level of challenges that they may be having, because the smile sometimes seemingly might mask on the outside what is turmoil on the inside, because of that professionalism, that level of being stoic, as it were. Now, I want to say that to say that we don't necessarily need to shy away from technology. We don't need to be hopefully fearful that one day artificial intelligence can have everything automated and there'll be no need for a human. But now, we don't know what tomorrow brings, but now we know the importance. If in the last year has done, nothing, let it be a reflection of the importance of sharing quality time with the people that mean something to you. And, I can say that the game of dominoes or chess for some or checkers for the rest of us is something that we can enjoy, but maybe it's cards or, a game of pool. Perhaps it's just sitting and watching the sunset or watch the moon come up. Last evening, how many of us had plans to do that? But because of the rain, we decide not to. Maybe the fear that I'm not going to say it in another way, but the mosquitoes, not mozzies and not mosquitoes, but as Ray Michael reminds us, the mosquitoes, they may have been out in a very, very strong deterrent kind of manner, may have caused us to postpone whatever plans we may have had to go watch, the moon rise. Perhaps we caught the eclipse somewhat, or maybe we wanted to, but forgot it because of obligations to work or to family, or to have been self-imposed. Not that we couldn't have put aside a slight time to do it. And for those of us who made the opportunity to watch the sunset or watch the moon come up, or maybe you've been so blessed to be able to do both. Maybe you've been able to do both in a space, in a time where your mind may not necessarily have been where you wanted to be, but it's a reflection in time that you appreciate the now. Well, do we? Share with us. Comes back to the notion of how many of you have increasingly said, that idea that I've been banding about, the 4-day work week. Well, it's been a long time ago. A family member seconded to Germany come back and says, you realize that a strong economic powerhouse like Germany has employed, the notion that their employees can have staggered work hours, can, if they so choose, have a 4-day work week. Not because it's a social democracy, but because it appreciates the importance of productivity. We look at the state of Utah, have an experiment, towards 2008 and 9 and thereabouts, realizing that there were financial and economic benefits to doing just that. Not possible in every industry, not even possible for every employee, even if it's beneficial to the sector. But what is your view? Do you see it as, well, wait a minute, there's 7 days in the week, so I should work 7 days so I can make 7 days of pay and have 7 days of profitability because my business is open 7 days, it'll make more money, or 24/7. It might just be. But then again, are you scheduling it so that it's allowing the machinery to be taken offline and service, the employees to be able to have time to not just re-energize, but to appreciate the toils of their labor? Let's test to see the thought process, and let's ensure that the technology exists so that the phone lines are still in operation. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. The other thing that I want to ask of you, a number you have shared that for whatever reason, we're now talking about the segregation in the schools. Not a word that I think we necessarily had perhaps taken on board. And we're seeing growing disparity amongst many within our society, greater division, sadly, within our society. But just the terminology, we have public and private school, we have a church school and a non-secular school. Just the labels that we have assigned to certain things. And the question is that when we look at education, should we be looking at education as inclusive as possible, appreciating, and I don't speak with any great authority nor wish to come across as such, appreciating that there are some students, because they're perhaps very, very academically engaged, may be performing at a level higher than their age bracket. But how do we accommodate and respond to them properly? There may be other students, because of intellectual challenges, physical challenges and the like, may need a little extra assistance. Their mobility could be somewhat impaired because of something that happened early in life, even from birth. It could have been a recent accident that has now caused them for an extended period of time to be sadly immobile. It may be something to do with their hearing or their sight or the like. But how do we make sure that they are, as much as possible, understand that they are valued and appreciated and important, not to put them in a space where they stand out in such a way that they feel, conscious in a bad way, but to allow them to feel that they can to be integrated, to be included. Maybe there are times that we would put, just like we would on a football team, would you put players who are just starting to learn the game on one team to go and play against another team that is not only older, better trained and resourced, and who've been playing for the longest of time. Now, if you're doing that to be able to demonstrate, this is where you are, this is where you can come from, this is how it's played, and it's part of the exhibition, so they can be included as a teaching tool to bring them along, and you do that respectfully and responsibly, perhaps. But if it's a competitive game and one team is designed to deliberately decimate the other, well, would that do anything for the sport? Irrespective of what it certainly will immediately do for the participants. Not unlike what we should be considering with our education. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. Now, our thoughts, as many have shared, that come next Tuesday, the calendar will roll around and it'll say the 1st of June, and officially, we'll be into hurricane season. Now, we've seen already, the weather patterns have changed over the years. We've seen sort of presentation of some storm systems. If the meteorologists and the weather sort of enthusiasts would allow me to phrase it as such, we don't look from their perspective as when the calendar says the date. We look at what has happened in our society. I think many have commended the Honorable Premier and his government for looking at climate and the importance of the environment, and the notion that where we are potentially, despite what one of our local newspapers may have said long ago, we were so small that our impact on the environment is insignificant and almost negligible. Maybe we have now taken a different perspective, that our individual actions, what they say, think globally and act locally. So our individual actions can be impactful. How much are we doing to reuse and reduce and recycle? What is it in relation to our purchasing habits to ensure that we are not disposing and discarding of more than necessary? Are we deliberately and consciously consuming items that are sourced responsibly? And what does that even mean? And can we actually have confidence that that is happening and be not just assured, but through our actions to ensure that there is that trickle all the way through the supply chain that allows the product to be so responsibly sourced. Now, from that perspective, look at our roads. Not just the amount of cars, but the emissions from our cars, those pollutants that sometimes are spewing from many of our vehicles. What about the level of industry that we have? Not to highlight, nor to certainly bring it into a negative light, but look at our power generation. Are the stacks, as we look and watch this, if you love it, the smoke that is emanating from, is it that we can do that and make it less of a carbon sort of emission? Are our vehicles being serviced properly? Are we ensuring that we're not doing that not only through the regular servicing, but the oils and the fuels that we put into it, like we do with our power generation? And what about how much frequency we would use and getting from point A to point B? Can we walk or ride or carpool or do something else? Is it that the convenience outweighs, in our sense, that impact on the society? Because we think, well, it's just one individual in one small space, so therefore it cannot amount to anything significant. Well, maybe it does. Think about it. One person putting 1 cent into a jar for every day versus putting $1, versus 100 people putting 1 cent or $1 every day. Obviously, it makes a significant difference. More of us that do better, the better it will be done, and the more and immediately the impact will be evident. Let's pause and take a short break and join our callers right after.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Things just got a bit hotter on the island. Come in today and order the new spicy Korean subs at Subway. They're sweet, spicy, and especially satisfying.
Stop in and try the pulled pork with spicy Korean sauce, or the chicken with spicy Korean sauce. And you can message WhatsApp at 929-4658. Order online or use Let's Eat or the Bento app. The spicy Korean subs at Subway in 2 flavors, extra saucy and extra spicy. Subway, eat fresh.
The La Masque Dinner Show, an elegant evening of fine dining, live entertainment, and more at the Kimpton Seafire Resort. Saturday, June 5th, 7 p.m. to midnight. Tickets are just $150 each on eventpro.ky or visit Les Classiques to book a table of 10. Proceeds to benefit the HSA's dialysis unit. The La Masque Dinner Show, a signature Batabanu event, June 5th at the Kimpton Seafire Resort. See you there.
For 32 years, the Cayman Islands National Dance Company have performed well-received shows for enthusiastic audiences. For our 33rd season, we're grateful for the support, the dedicated dancers, and sacrifices made. So without further ado, Cayman Islands National Dance Company presents Gratitude. Gratitude celebrates over 3 decades of performances, both established and new dances. Gratitude is a must-see. June 5th and 6th at Hartwell Theater. Get your tickets today at Radiance Dance Studio, at the door, or call 926-1826. Sponsored by Caribbean Utilities Company, ARC Directors, Vise Closet, and Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us. It is open line as we go straight to our phones. Welcome. Thank you for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How you doing?
Very blessed, very thankful. And yourself?
I am awesome.
Amen.
Can't complain at all.
Awesome, man. I like that word. Awesome it is.
Yep. You see, I had to call in, to keep it company a little bit because
Thank you.
There.
I appreciate it, man. You always have something great to contribute, and always good to hear from you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Now, of course you can share as you wish, but what are your thoughts on the 2 things that we referenced relative to the possibility and the profitability, both from the financial perspective, but as it would accrue to society, of looking at the way we go to work now? We saw with staggered time and people working different times on a shift system, as it were, that there's less traffic congestion possibly on the roads and even out and about, generally speaking. So parking isn't such an issue, and then the need to provide even more parking and pave over green spaces to create sort of solid parking spaces, and the heat island effect that would be a consequence. What do you think of a 4-day work week where possible? Not compromising the quality of service, not compromising customers' ability to access service. What would be your initial thoughts on that?
Dwayne, you can do either or, a 4 or 5 day week. If you do a 5-day week, you get less hours, per day.
But 5 days at 8 hours a day, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, based on the law. I'm only going as per law. Based on the law, we have to work 8 hours a day. For a 40-hour week. I think that's what the labor law states, that either 40 or 45 hours per week.
Right. But the song.
If you work a 4-day week, you got 9 hours to make 45.
Right. If that's the, but even that, well, just as a discussion, we could look at, should it be 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, 60 hours for the week? Should it be 4 days, 5 days, 6 days,
Right. What I'm getting at is, if you work for the 4 days at 9 hours, you would say 3 extra hours there because you got to get up in the morning an hour earlier, and then you get home an hour later. So instead of having 9 hours, you got 12. You're away from your family, I think, more than you would be if you did the 5-day week.
How so? If you have one day, let's say, well, go on. I'll follow your logic. Let's see.
Yeah. Now, 1 day a week, is that quality time or quantity time for your family?
If the reality now is that, let's say you are 5 days versus 4 days, and those 5 days you're with everybody else, you're in a lot more traffic without the family. So if the 4 days mean that there are less people on the road and your commute time is significantly reduced, right?
How will that make it less on the road for a 4-day week? Because nothing really have changed except you added 1 or 2 hours more to your workload.
Yeah. So let's say you do a 4-day work week. Let's just use Monday through Friday for argument's sake, right? And every day everybody goes in at the same time for this. But let's say on 1 day of the week, a certain percentage off for that day, and it's staggered throughout the Monday through Friday. And then that translates into those individuals, all else being equal, not on the road during those peak times where everybody's getting to work at the same time. That reduced traffic congestion, the amount of people on the road, should mean...
For 1 day.
1 day spread out, yeah.
Remember now, you're a tourism-based island. So if, let's say for argument's sake, the merchants gonna make money, they gotta open still the 6-7 days a week. They're gonna still have the same amount of people working every day. It's not gonna alleviate any traffic. One or two vehicles difference per day. And that's still not saying that that's because a lot of people on their day off is going into town to do business anyway.
But do you think that you don't think that it would eliminate traffic?
No, I don't. One thing that I see could be done, which is not done, is that they do a lane, which I mean, not much space for those anyway, but with the 4 lanes that they have, 2 on either side, you can have one that is designated for carpooling. If you don't have, because they do it in the States, if you don't have so many people within that vehicle,
they have off once a vehicle lanes.
Right.
Okay.
That can be also used or put another lane, which would have to be 3 lanes on the road on either side for bus transport.
Yeah, well, it certainly is much discussion to be had. I mean, as you shared, that we can look at it from the perspective of what is going to not just improve the commute, but improve the quality of life for others as opposed to where we are, man. Hey, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate you reaching out. We got a couple more calls. Let's just take them before we call it a day. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
Good. Lots of rain. Thank God.
Thank God, huh?
Yeah, I'm calling about the help for the farmers with the card to assist farmers. I'm not sure what is going on, but right now everybody is a farmer. I've seen people that are renting through needs assessment unit, going there and collecting stuff. They're farming. I'm not sure what the criteria is or what the regulations are for these people. I know a lot of them isn't farming. We're all thankful for the help. And it's a good time to plant now. It's raining and everything, and, you know, we want our yards and stuff to look beautiful. But unfortunately, something has to be done. I went there this morning to get some potting soil, and it was like a flea market. There were people there from must have been like 7 o'clock. They were opening at 8:15, then they stayed 8:30, and then it was minutes to 9. Apparently, I saw people came dressed to the 90 and 9, walked up and got services from before the people that were there from 7 o'clock. And I think it's very unfair. What they need to do is have a numbering system, because each and every one probably wanted to get service, as we all do. But unfortunately, it has to have a system, because it's like no one has a clue what is going on. There are people that was there from 7 o'clock, people that came in 9 o'clock, walked up, got their stuff, and left. And there were people that were still standing outside of the gate. I mean, the guy that was in charge said, okay, we're going to let in 10 people. If senior citizens were there, I think they should have let the senior citizens in first, whether or not everyone wanted to get a chance to get inside to purchase their goods, or they should have do it in number and form. You know, if I went to a place and I'm in the bank and my line, I'm in the first line, I give first. If the next person behind me is second, and I think that's how it should be. And another thing, I don't know how many farmers are here now, because everybody is farming because they're getting a free vulture for $400 a month till June. I don't know where these people are going with the stuff, and I know a lot of them are not farmers. Whether they are getting the stuff because they can get it for free and they're selling it, or they're sending it home, or they're trading it, something has to be done, because I don't know what the criteria was for people to get this 400 assistance farming, because I'm Caymanian and I know definitely who farm from who don't. What they need to do is go and check these people's yards, check see where their stuff is going, and then they need to say, well, okay, show me your ID for a farmer, or where do you stay? Can I come and look at your farm or something? Something definitely needs to be done. After the end of June, you watch to see how many farmers will be there collecting. Let me tell you, they're losing a lot of money, and I'm not sure who is to blame. But unfortunately, half of those people are not farmers. It's only because it is free that everyone is a farmer now. If you go and you say, can I get a pound of peppers? We don't have peppers. I heard someone say, one lady walked in there one day and said, oh, can I use it at Bigelow? Then I heard another one saying, oh, what is the thing you put on the plants for the white fly? If you're farmers, you should know all these stuff. You know, you should be buying these way before you get a free vulture for $400. Come on, something needs to be done. And I mean, if they need to know, I'm going to call the Minister for Agriculture and tell him he needs to have a look there in the morning to see what is going on. And I know for certain half of these people are not farmers. I know, I've been here, I've grown up here, I raised here, and I know who's farmer from who isn't farmers. So I think they need to draw the line and get this thing sorted, because from the ass to the elephant is a farmer. And I don't think it is right to the good farmers that Mr. Willapene from Northside and all those other people, Paul Borden and a few other people that are real farmers, Dave Ebanks and them, I don't think it's fair to them, because when they need the product, there's nothing there. And all little backyard people say they're farming, they don't have a thing in their yard. I don't know where the material and the stuff is going, but they need to check it out.
All right. Well, certainly appreciate it. And a couple of people weighed in saying that they agree with you that you're right. But maybe it is where the criteria needs to be evaluated and reevaluated. But thanks for sharing that thought. And we'll take perhaps a final caller. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, good afternoon, Gene. I hear the last caller, but she is right with one thing for sure. One thing that she can be rest assured with. After June, you won't have no more up there. You can go up in and get into it normal. I went there this morning too. When I got there, it was a real farmer's market, as she said. So it was a real market. It was a market with people up there. But anyway, that's not what I called you for. In respect to the traffic situation, there is only really one solution to the traffic problem here. If you look around and you see, you look around and you take note of the vehicles that are being driven here. Take note of the vehicles that are being driven here predominantly. And what are they? They're the rejected cars from Japan, right? They're the rejected cars from Japan. What needs to be happening is that it needs to be put that you can't bring effective such and such a date. No more vehicles imported from Japan that is not of a certain age.
Okay.
they're going up there picking up these vehicles. Half of them is not even Caymanians, and coming back here and selling them and making a fortune off of them. That is all that is happening, Jane. That is all that is happening. So that's the first start, right? I mean, you don't expect. I mean, you know, the government is just starting out, so we got to give them a chance to get things sorted out. But that's the first thing that you got to do, you know, and then you'll see that the auto industry will sort of regularize itself, you know.
But in addition, though, I mean, if we were to, you know, certainly your points have merit, but there are times when people, and we ourselves may have witnessed, share that they've seen vehicles on the road with the brand new license plates, some up in the very highest numbers to be issued, and just a casual inspection as the vehicle is passing by. One questions whether that vehicle looks or sounds roadworthy. How did that vehicle, you know, would have passed inspection? So are there also questions as to whether or not we're doing the right thing in that respect?
I mean, there certainly is, but as I say, you know, that's the first start, and I mean, you know, I understand that it is revenue as well, but then it is causing a strain on the infrastructure of the island, and one that nobody really needs, really. So, I mean, I tell you what, Dwayne, I would rather live, you know, live in I don't know what area than have to live anywhere from Jose gas station going east, because it's a nightmare, man. I mean, I don't know how these people put up with it. How they must go leave home from 5 o'clock in the morning to try to get to their work by 8 o'clock. You know,
something that we really need to address that, because there's a societal impact. You know, the families are not spending time together. Is sleep being affected? Are they, you know, when they come in, what about their mindset? So you are right. Yeah. And just sitting there too in traffic, you know, it can't be healthy. Are you just so seated there, you're not moving around, blood flow, circulation? I'm not sure. Certain consequences to consider.
Right.
All right.
So, okay, Dwayne, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, man. Thank you for always, you know, willing to share and waiting with us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon as well. All right, to our listeners, can't believe it's Friday already. Come tomorrow. Please join Mr. Art in the morning for the record. I'll come back for a talk today right after the midday news and midday meditation, as we invite you to always stay tuned to Radio Cayman. I know that the songs that we play between now and 3 are soothing. 3 and 6, you know, invigorates. 6 to 7 informs through the news hour, and then thereafter we can be really, truly engaged. Have a wonderful, pleasant, productive, enjoyable rest of this Thursday. If it's raining and wet outside, well, be careful, cautious, and considerate. If it's hot, dry, and sunny, well, be so as well, because arriving safe and a good state of mind is even better. I asked Miss Susan for some songs, and she selected one that I like, Billy Joel, Innocent Man. Hey, she queued it up. We're going to play it. Hope you enjoy it. Until tomorrow, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. And Royal Fidelity Bank and Trust, money at work.
Cayman, the voice.